Most men think reading a woman comes down to luck or charisma or some kind of natural gift they just weren't born with. That's the lie nobody questions. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Women's body language does almost all the talking, long before a single word leaves her mouth. Studies suggest the vast majority of human communication happens non-verbally, which means every man chasing the right thing to say is solving the wrong problem entirely. Here's the paradox. The men who seem to just get it with women aren't smarter, luckier, or more attractive. They simply learn to read signs of attraction that are happening in plain sight, signals most people are taught to ignore. And once you see them, you can't unsee them. Every glance, every shift in posture, every accidental touch starts to mean something. By the end of this video, you'll have a complete framework for reading body language. 7 signals, 1 decoding system, and the ability to walk into almost any room and know within minutes whether the energy is open or closed, interested or indifferent. This isn't pickup artist nonsense. This is attraction psychology, grounded in real behavior science, broken down so simply that you'll start noticing it in your very next conversation. Before we dive in, drop a comment below with the body language sign you think you've already mastered, or the one you've gotten wrong the most. And if you're serious about finally understanding how to read women instead of guessing, hit like and subscribe, because what's coming next builds directly on everything you're about to learn. A moment exists right before anything is said, where the eyes do all the talking. Most men walk into a conversation hunting for the perfect line, completely missing the fact that women's body language has already given away the verdict in the first 3 seconds. A woman who holds your gaze a beat longer than necessary isn't being careless. She's testing whether you'll hold it back. That tiny pause, that flicker of sustained eye contact, is one of the clearest signs of attraction a man can learn to catch if he simply knows where to look. Neuroscience backs this up in a way that almost feels too convenient. Sustained eye contact triggers a release of oxytocin and activates the brain's reward circuitry, the same pathway tied to bonding and trust. This is the foundation of attraction psychology. The eyes aren't just windows to the soul, they're a subconscious signal flare. When someone's pupils dilate slightly during a conversation, it's an involuntary response, almost impossible to fake. That's the beauty of reading body language. It bypasses the filter people use with words and exposes what's happening underneath. Not all eye contact carries the same weight, and that's exactly where it gets interesting. A difference exists between a glance that lingers with intention and one that lingers out of sheer social awkwardness. And most men can't tell the two apart, which is exactly why they misread half the rooms they walk into. The trick isn't just noticing that she looked. It's noticing the rhythm, the timing, the way her gaze behaves when paired with everything else her body's doing. This is where female body language signals start to layer on top of each other, building a picture instead of a single data point. Here's the practical translation, the part that actually matters when you're standing there in the moment. If a woman holds eye contact for 2 to 3 seconds longer than a casual glance, then looks away and back again, that's not nervousness. That's a deliberate re-engagement. Compare that to someone who avoids eye contact altogether, glancing around the room, checking their phone, scanning the exits. That's discomfort doing the talking, not interest. And any man serious about how to read women needs to learn that distinction first. Think of it like learning a new language where the vocabulary is silent. At first, every glance looks the same. Every flicker seems random. But the longer you study it, the more the pattern reveals itself, almost like static turning into a clear signal on an old radio. This single skill on its own is enough to shift how a man reads every interaction he walks into. But the eyes are only the opening chapter of a much bigger language, one that gets even more revealing the moment 2 bodies start moving in sync. A quiet kind of flattery happens without anyone saying a word, and most people never even notice it's happening to them. When a woman starts mirroring your posture, leaning in when you lean in, crossing her legs the same direction yours are crossed, picking up the rhythm of your speech, that's not coincidence. That's women's body language speaking in its most honest dialect. Mirroring is one of the oldest, most reliable signs of attraction, because it happens below the level of conscious thought. She's not deciding to do it, her body is doing it for her. This phenomenon has a name in psychology. It's called the chameleon effect, and it's been studied extensively because of how consistently it shows up between people who feel a genuine connection. Researchers have found that when two people are in sync, physically, vocally, even in breathing pace, their brains are engaging mirror neurons, the same cells responsible for empathy and social bonding. This is attraction psychology in its purest form. Synchronization isn't performance, it's the nervous system quietly saying, I feel comfortable enough with you to match your energy. Here's a personal example that might land if you've ever paid close attention on a date. A woman once unconsciously started sipping her drink right after I did, almost on a delay of a second or two, like an echo. I didn't say anything, just kept talking. And over the next 10 minutes, she crossed her arms when I crossed mine, tilted her head when I tilted mine. That's reading body language in real time. And once you catch it once, you start seeing it everywhere. So here's the practical translation. If you want to test for mirroring without being obvious, change your posture subtly, lean back, take a sip of your drink, shift your weight, and watch what happens in the next 30 seconds. If she follows even slightly, that's female body language signals confirming sync. This works both ways too. A skilled communicator can lead the mirroring, shifting his own posture into something more open and relaxed, and watching her body naturally follow the cue, almost like leading a dance she doesn't know she's dancing. This is one of those tools that separates the men who guess from the men who actually know. It's a quiet form of dating advice for men that nobody talks about because it doesn't fit in a flashy headline. But mirroring on its own is still just one piece of a much larger puzzle, because the way a body opens up or shuts down tells a story that's even louder than synchronization ever could. Long before two people exchange a single word, their bodies have already started a negotiation. One side deciding whether to open up, the other side deciding whether it's safe to do the same. This is the silent architecture behind women's body language, and it's one of the first things any man should learn to read because posture rarely lies even when words do. Crossed arms, crossed legs, a bag clutched tightly against the chest. These aren't random habits. They're protective barriers, a body saying not yet without a single syllable. On the flip side, an open posture, shoulders relaxed, torso angled toward you, is one of the more obvious signs of attraction, simply because it removes the wall instead of building one. Solid psychological grounding exists behind this. Closed postures are tied to the body's threat response system. When someone feels even mildly unsafe or uncertain, the body instinctively makes itself smaller, almost like shrinking back into a shell. This is primal, the same mechanism you'd see in any animal trying to protect its vital organs. Open posture, by contrast, signals that the nervous system has downgraded its alert level. She's comfortable enough to expose her front, the most vulnerable part of the body. This is attraction psychology working exactly as it was designed to, long before modern dating ever existed. Now here's where most men get it wrong, and it's worth slowing down on this. Crossed arms don't always mean disinterest. Sometimes a woman is just cold, or the chair has no armrests, or she's holding a drink in a way that happens to look closed off. This is why reading body language has to be a pattern, never a single snapshot. Look at the broader context. Is she also leaning away, avoiding eye contact, and keeping her feet pointed toward the exit? That's a real closed cluster. Compare that to someone whose arms are crossed but her feet are pointed toward you, her torso angled in, and she's still engaged in conversation. That's comfort with one isolated habit, not rejection. Watch the torso and the feet before anything else, because they're the hardest parts of the body to consciously control. Most people manage their face, but they forget their feet are even part of the conversation. That's the practical translation for the moment you're actually in it. If her knees are pointed toward you and her posture has opened up over the course of the conversation, starting close and gradually relaxing, that's one of the clearest female body language signals that she's warming up in real time, almost like watching ice thaw in front of you. I remember coaching a friend who kept insisting a date wasn't interested because her arms were crossed the entire dinner. until I pointed out her feet had been angled toward him the whole time, and she'd laughed at every single one of his jokes. Posture is a chapter, not the whole book. And that's exactly why this piece of dating advice for men works best when it's paired with everything else her body does next, especially the small, almost involuntary habits she starts doing with her hair and her clothes. A small, almost invisible ritual happens right before someone decides they want to be seen differently. A hand brushing through hair, a quick adjustment of a sleeve, a glance down to make sure everything sits just right. This is preening, and it's one of the more subtle expressions of women's body language, precisely because it looks like nothing at all. Most men walk right past it, too focused on what to say next to notice that her body has already started preparing to be noticed. When grooming behavior shows up in your presence specifically, that's one of the quieter but more telling signs of attraction in the entire repertoire. Evolutionary psychology has a fairly straightforward explanation here, even if it sounds almost too simple to be true. Self-grooming in the presence of someone is a display behavior rooted in the same instinct that makes a peacock fan its feathers or a bird preen before a potential mate. It's not vanity, it's biology. A way of saying, I want to present my best version to you without consciously thinking it through. This sits right at the center of attraction psychology, where small, seemingly meaningless gestures are actually loaded with intent. The conscious mind hasn't caught up to yet. Here's a practical example worth holding on to. If a woman touches her hair within the first few minutes of meeting you, then continues doing it intermittently throughout the conversation, especially right after you say something that makes her laugh, that's not nervous habit, that's calibrated. Compare that to someone fidgeting with their hair the entire time regardless of what's being said, eyes darting around, posture stiff. That's a different signal altogether, closer to discomfort than interest. This is exactly why reading body language demands context, not just a checklist of gestures pulled out of thin air. The practical translation gets even sharper once you start watching for clusters. Adjusting jewelry, smoothing down clothing, touching the neck or collarbone, checking makeup in a reflective surface nearby. These are all variations of the same underlying impulse. And when several show up together inside a short window, that's a strong cluster of female body language signals worth paying attention to. I've noticed this myself on dates. A woman who barely touched her hair for the first 20 minutes suddenly starts adjusting it the moment the conversation shifts towards something more personal. That timing alone tells you more than the gesture itself. This piece of dating advice for men matters because it teaches patience. Instead of chasing a reaction, you start noticing the ones already happening in front of you. But preening only tells you part of the story because the body doesn't just prepare itself to be seen, it also decides how close it's willing to let you get, and that decision shows up in something far easier to measure than a strand of hair. Distance is a language all on its own, and most people never realize how much they're communicating with the simple act of standing closer or stepping back. Personal space is sacred territory, guarded almost instinctively, which is exactly why changes in proximity carry so much weight inside women's body language. When a woman closes the gap between you, leaning in during conversation, choosing the seat next to you instead of across the table, angling her body so there's less air between you, that's one of the more direct signs of attraction, because physical closeness requires a level of comfort that can't be faked for long. A well-documented concept in psychology called proxemics studies exactly this: how humans use physical space to communicate comfort, dominance, intimacy, and everything in between. Most people maintain what's called a social distance with strangers and acquaintances, somewhere around 4 to 12 feet. But that distance shrinks dramatically once trust starts building. When someone voluntarily steps into the personal zone, typically within 1.5 feet, that's the nervous system signaling safety. This is attraction psychology playing out in real measurable space, not just an abstract feeling. Here's where it gets practical, and where most men either get it completely wrong or never test it at all. If you take a small step back during a conversation and she takes a step forward to close the gap again, that's an active, unconscious choice to stay close, and it's one of the most reliable female body language signals available because it's nearly impossible to fake without thinking about it. Compare that to someone who steps back the moment you step closer, maintaining the same distance no matter what you do. That's the body protecting its space, not inviting you in. I remember a moment at a crowded bar where there was plenty of room to spread out, yet the woman I was talking to kept choosing to stand close enough that our shoulders nearly touched every time the crowd shifted. She didn't have to do that. There was space everywhere else. But she chose proximity anyway, and that choice said more than anything she could have said out loud. This is the kind of detail that turns reading body language from theory into something you can actually use in the middle of a real conversation. This particular piece of dating advice for men works best as a quiet experiment. Create small gaps, see who closes them, and pay attention to whether she fills the space herself rather than waiting for you to do it. But proximity only tells you about comfort with distance. It doesn't tell you what happens the moment her voice changes, the second she starts talking only to you, which is where the next layer of the picture starts to come into focus. A version of someone's voice exists that only comes out around people they actually want to be around. Softer, slower, sometimes a touch higher in pitch. And most men never notice it because they're not listening for it. They're just listening to the words. Vocal tone is one of the most overlooked layers of women's body language, mostly because it hides in plain sound, easy to dismiss as just how she talks. But when a woman's voice shifts specifically when she's speaking to you, compared to how she talks to a server, a friend, or a stranger asking for directions, that contrast becomes one of the more revealing signs of attraction a man can train himself to catch. Actual research backs this up, and it's fairly fascinating once you dig into it. Studies on vocal pitch have shown that women's voices tend to rise slightly and soften in tone when speaking to someone they find attractive, an unconscious adaptation linked to perceived femininity and warmth cues. Meanwhile, the speaking pace often slows down too, almost as if the brain is buying itself more time to stay in the interaction longer. This is attraction psychology showing up acoustically, not just visually, proof that the signals aren't limited to what the eyes can see. Pay attention to her baseline voice early in the interaction, how she talks to the bartender, how she answers a quick question from a friend. And you'll have a practical way to catch this in real time, one that takes almost no extra effort once you know what you're listening for. Then compare that to how she sounds once the two of you are deep in conversation. If there's a noticeable softening, a slight rise in pitch, or a more deliberate, unhurried pace specifically directed at you, that's one of the clearer female body language signals. Except this one comes through the ears instead of the eyes. I've noticed this pattern myself more than once. A woman who answers her friend's text message in a flat, fast tone, then turns back to me and her entire vocal register shifts, softer, warmer, almost playful. That contrast is impossible to miss once you've trained yourself to listen for it. And it's a piece of reading body language that most dating advice completely ignores because it's not visual, it's auditory. This particular insight belongs in any serious dating advice for men toolkit because voice is harder to consciously control than people realize, which makes it one of the more honest signals available. But tone only tells part of the story because the final, most intimate layer of communication doesn't come through sound at all. It comes through touch, the kind that looks accidental but rarely is. A category of touch exists in a strange gray zone, too brief to be called intentional, too specific to be called accidental. And learning to recognize it is like unlocking the final layer of women's body language. A hand brushing your arm while making a point, a light touch on the shoulder while laughing, fingers grazing yours while passing something across the table. These micro-touches are deliberate tests disguised as casual gestures. They're testing the waters of physical comfort without committing to anything overt, which makes them one of the more nuanced signs of attraction a man can learn to spot, precisely because they're designed to be deniable if needed. A clear psychological mechanism explains why these touches matter so much, even at just a fraction of a second in duration. Physical touch releases oxytocin almost instantly, the same bonding chemical involved in eye contact and synchronization. But touch carries an extra layer of vulnerability because it crosses a physical boundary that eye contact and posture never do. This is attraction psychology at its most exposed. Touch requires a level of comfort that can't be faked without feeling awkward, which is exactly why these moments tend to feel charged, even when they last less than a second. Here's the practical distinction that separates a real signal from pure coincidence. A single brush of contact during a crowded, chaotic moment means very little on its own. Bars are tight, sidewalks are narrow, accidents happen constantly. But when the touches repeat, especially in moments where there was clearly room to avoid contact, that's female body language signals compounding into something deliberate. Watch for touches that linger half a second longer than necessary, or touches that happen during calm moments where there's no physical reason to be close at all. That's the difference between noise and pattern. I remember a night where a woman accidentally touched my forearm 3 separate times over the course of an hour. Each time during a story I was telling. Each time in a spacious, uncrowded room where there was no real reason for contact. The third time made it obvious. That wasn't an accident. That was a test to see how I'd react. And reacting calmly, without flinching or over-celebrating it, mattered more than the touch itself. This is reading body language in its most advanced form, where the signal isn't just received, it's responded to with the right energy. This piece of dating advice for men closes the loop on something most men get backwards. They either ignore touch completely or read way too much into a single brush of contact. The real skill is pattern recognition, and now that all 7 signals are on the table, the question becomes how to read them together as one unified system instead of as 7 separate guesses. Here's the twist that separates a man who's actually mastered reading body language from one who just memorized a list of signals. Nervousness and disinterest can look almost identical on the surface, and confusing the two is exactly why so many men misjudge entire interactions. A racing heartbeat, fidgeting hands, avoided eye contact, a slightly stiff posture, these can mean, "I'm not interested," or they can mean, "I'm interested and it's making me nervous." And the difference between those two outcomes is night and day. Most dating advice for men completely skips this distinction, which is exactly why this piece of the puzzle matters so much. The psychology here actually makes sense once you slow down and look at it. Genuine disinterest tends to come with avoidance. Minimal engagement, short answers, body angled toward an exit, eyes scanning the room for anyone else to talk to. Nervous attraction, on the other hand, still shows engagement underneath the discomfort. She's still answering, still making an effort to keep the conversation going, still occasionally meeting your eyes even if she breaks contact quickly afterward. This is attraction psychology at its most counterintuitive. The nervous system can produce stress responses for 2 completely opposite reasons, and only the surrounding context tells you which one you're looking at. Look at effort, not just comfort. That's the practical translation, the part that actually saves a man from second-guessing himself into giving up too early. A disinterested woman conserves energy, short replies, flat tone, body pulling away. A nervous but interested woman spends energy even while uncomfortable. She laughs a little too quickly, talks a little too much, fidgets with her hands but stays engaged the entire time. And her female body language signals still lean open even while her hands betray a flicker of nerves. I think back to a conversation where a woman barely made eye contact, kept touching her necklace, and gave short, almost clipped answers for the first several minutes. Every textbook, "she's not interested" cue stacked on top of each other. But she never once looked toward the door, never checked her phone, never tried to exit the conversation. And the moment I made a joke that landed, her whole posture loosened up like a held breath finally released. That wasn't disinterest, that was nerves wearing a disguise. And missing that distinction would have cost the entire interaction. This is the layer of attraction psychology that turns guessing into genuine reading. Because now, instead of looking at signals one at a time, there's a way to weigh them together as a complete system, the same way a detective doesn't solve a case off a single clue, but off the full pattern staring back at him. So here's where it all comes together. You now have 7 signals: eye contact, mirroring, posture, preening, proximity, tone, and touch. Plus the one filter most men never learn: knowing the difference between genuine nervousness and real disinterest. One sign alone is just noise. 3 or more lining up together is a pattern. And when all 7 show up at once, she's basically handed you an open book. The only question left is whether you know how to read it. But here's the part that actually matters. Knowledge without application changes nothing. The next time you are in a conversation, are you going to keep guessing, or are you finally going to start watching? Are you going to let another interaction slip by because you were too busy thinking about what to say next instead of paying attention to what her body was already telling you? Reading body language isn't a party trick. It's a skill, and skills only sharpen with repetition. The next woman you talk to, run the system. Watch the eyes, watch the feet. Listen to the voice. You'll be shocked how much you missed before today. This is just the surface of attraction psychology. There's a whole deeper layer of dating advice for men that goes beyond signals and into the psychology of how attraction actually builds, escalates, and sometimes quietly dies if you miss your window. If you want to keep building this skill, subscribe and turn on notifications, because the next video goes even further into territory most men never learn, and you don't want to miss it.